Ola was mine, but you still went for her. What kind of friend are you? Dele vented. Mind the way you talk to your master's servant? Akin retorted. I can have whichever woman I want. I am Akin, the Bale of Ibaland. Dele broke into a mocking laughter to Akin's bewilderment. I know who you are. I alone know who you really are. So snap out of your delusions, Dele warned him. Akin was silent. He could notice something had changed about Dele. A long time ago, in a small beautiful village nestled in the heart of West Africa, there lived two friends, Dele and Akin, who came from humble beginnings. Dele was known for his honesty and hard work, while Akin was cunning, always seeking shortcuts to wealth. The two friends found work as laborers for the wealthy farmers in the village. One bright afternoon, they toiled under the scorching sun on the yam farm owned by a prosperous man everyone called Otumba. During their break, Ola, a graceful servant girl, came to serve them refreshments. Dele's eyes followed her every move. It was clear he had a deep affection for her. And Ola too seemed to reciprocate his feelings. However, Akin, ever the pragmatist, scoffed at Dele's hopes. Remember, my friend, Akin said with a smirk, a poor man's love is like a snail's shell. It may look solid, but it's easily crushed. Ola's mother will marry her off to a wealthy man so she doesn't suffer. Don't waste your heart on dreams that won't come true. Dele's heart sank, knowing there was truth in Akin's words. As the evening approached and their work day ended, the two friends began their walk home. The road was long and winding, and just as the sun dipped below the horizon, they encountered an old seer sitting by the side of the road. His presence was both eerie and captivating, his eyes filled with wisdom and mystery. Come closer, the seer beckoned, his voice rich with the weight of countless stories. I have seen your paths, and the spirits have spoken to me. Akin, always eager for news of his fortune, stepped forward first. The seer, speaking in riddles and proverbs, declared, the gecko is small, but finds its way into the king's chamber. With palm oil you will wash your hands, and with palm wine you will rinse your mouth as the next king of this kingdom. Akin's face lit up with joy, his chest swelling with pride. He could already picture himself adorned in royal robes, commanding respect and authority. Then the seer turned to Dele, his gaze piercing and somber. And you, hard-working Dele, you will remain a servant all your life. Dele's heart grew heavy with despair. The seer's prophecies were infamous for their accuracy, never failing to come true. Akin's joy contrasted sharply with Dele's sorrows as they walked along their path. As the two men continued their journey, Akin's keen eyes caught sight of something glittering on the ground. He bent down and picked up a gold ring adorned with a vibrant red gemstone. It was an exquisite piece, clearly belonging to someone of high status. Akin's heart swelled with joy, taking this discovery as a sign that the seer's prophecy was beginning to unfold. He eagerly slipped the ring onto his finger, feeling the weight of his impending fortune. Dele, Akin exclaimed, his voice brimming with excitement. Let's celebrate this blessing. Tonight, the drinks are on me. Akin's insensitivity was evident. He did not consider how the prophecy might have weighed on Dele's heart. Yet, Dele, ever the loyal friend, pushed aside his sadness to join in the celebration. The two friends made their way to a lively drinking hut. As they settled down, Akin generously bought drinks for everyone, spreading his newfound joy. Amongst the patrons were wealthy travelers, their leader, Doku, being the most distinguished. Doku's eyes were drawn to the ring on Akin's finger. His eyes widened in astonishment. He hurried over to Akin. "Your ring is quite a unique one," said Doku, his voice a mix of awe and urgency. "Where did you get it?" Doku demanded. Akin, ever the smooth talker, replied without hesitation. "This ring? It has been with me for as long as I can remember. I must have been born with it." And Dele watched in amazement as Akin wove his lies effortlessly. Doku, overwhelmed with emotions, bowed his knees in gratitude to Ledumare. "We have found our master's lost son," he declared. Akin stared at him in confusion, but Doku quickly explained. "My master, Ajani, is the wealthy ruler of Ibatao. Many years ago, he lost his only son, and not a day passed without him longing for the boy. Now, he lies on his sick bed, fearing he may not survive. He sent me on a desperate search for his heir, and here you are." Akin's ears tingled. His eyes sparkled with excitement and greed. "What are we waiting for? Take me to my beloved father," he declared. Doku was elated, but Dele pulled Akin aside. His face etched with concern. "Akin, are you mad? You can't impersonate another man's son and deceive a dying man." Akin's eyes hardened. "Dele, are you trying to stop my prophecy from coming true? Can't you see how everything is falling into place? You can stay here in poverty if you wish, but I am destined for greatness." Without another word, Akin stormed off, following Doku towards what he believed was his destiny. Dele, torn between loyalty and morality, decided to follow his friend, not out of a desire for wealth, but to ensure Akin's safety. Their journey took them a full day, during which Akin indulged himself in lavish feasts and drinks. Dele watched him with growing concern, fearing that Doku might see through Akin's deceit. However, Doku was too elated by his perceived success to notice Akin's gluttony. And finally, they arrived at their destination. Dele was awestruck by the massive compound, filled with beautiful huts and bustling with numerous servants. But as they entered the compound, they were met with a scene of mourning. While Doku was away, the old man had passed on. Doku fell on his knees, weeping bitterly. Akin, taking a cue, rolled on the floor, wailing loudly for his beloved father, whom death had stolen from him before they could reunite. His cries were inconsolable. Dele watched in disbelief, wondering who his friend had become. Weeks turned into months since the old ruler was laid to rest, and Akin had seamlessly taken his place as the new ruler, embraced by all as the long-lost son. He reveled in his newfound wealth, indulging in every pleasure. Dele, disheartened by the madness he witnessed, decided it was time to return home. Though he enjoyed the luxuries provided by Akin, his soul yearned for fulfillment. Later that day, he approached Akin to share his plans. Akin, with a dismissive tone, asked, What are you returning to? Poverty? Stay here. Serve me honorably like Doku served my father. Is it not better than slaving away for stingy farmers? Dele pondered Akin's words, seeing some truth in them. Everything seemed to unfold as the seer had prophesied. Reluctantly, she decided to stay and be an honorable servant. Days later, Otumba's servants arrived with food supplies, gifts of friendship for the new ruler, Akin. Among them was Ola. When she saw Akin as the new ruler, she was filled with questions. When Dele saw Ola, he was overjoyed. She remarked on how good he was looking now. Then they took a walk in the compound and tried to catch up. Dele saw a jewelry peddler. This would look good on your wrist, Dele said as he stared at a beautiful cowrie bangle. He bought one for her. Ola loved it, especially because it was a gift from Dele. It was when they sat down under a shed that Ola asked how Akin had come into his fortune. Dele sighed, saying it was a long story. Ola, intrigued, assured him she had time. She and her company would stay a day longer before returning to their town. But before they could continue, one of Otumba's servants called Ola away. As Dele watched Ola leave, he felt very hopeful. With Akin's help, he could now marry Ola and provide for her. However, while Dele was busy building castles in the air, Akin had summoned Ola to his chambers. He had spotted her when her company arrived from Otumba. Ola was happy to see Akin too, but she was unaware of his true motives. Akin told her how much he loved her and how he had always loved her. Ola was shocked to hear him say all this, but he knew his best friend Dele was interested in her. Akin scoffed. Dele, the poor farm laborer. Just then, Dele had arrived outside Akin's chamber. He heard Akin talking to Ola, and he could even see them through the ajar door. Dele's heart pounded in his chest. Akin had put his arm around Ola, and he told her to forget about Dele. Dele is a poor man destined to be a servant all his life, Akin said. Wouldn't it be better if you married a rich ruler like myself, who is destined to be the next king of this kingdom? Ola frowned in surprise. Yes, Akin's words were true. His family was next in line to the throne, and he, being their heir, will be the next king, just as the seer prophesied. Dele was heartbroken where he stood, with tears in his eyes. This was the ultimate betrayal. How could Akin do this to him? He was supposed to be his best friend. Dele walked away in anger. That night, Dele cried in his chambers. He boycotted the party Akin had thrown in honor of his guest. Ola had given herself cheaply to Akin. Because of his wealth, he couldn't stand seeing them together. The gods seemed unfair, favoring a callous man over a compassionate one. Very early the next morning, Dele left the town with a sling bag on his shoulder. He would journey as far as his legs would take him, far away from heartbreaks and betrayals. It was noon when Dele rested under a tree. Then he heard people shouting and running excitedly towards the road. He stood up to look. he saw a merchant caravan passing. People cheered the name, Yaya, Yaya, Yaya. Yaya, the owner of the caravan, was formerly a slave who bought his own freedom and became the wealthiest merchant in the region. The caravan paused and Yaya threw gold coins to the crowd. Everyone scrambled for what they could pick, and then, in his usual manner, he addressed the people. Do not scramble for what people throw at you. If one works diligently, heaven will see and reward. His voice echoed in the silence. I was told I would be a slave all my life, but I took my own destiny in my hands. Look at me now. Then the people cheered and thundered his name. Yaya, Yaya, Yaya. Dele stood transfixed. Yaya's words had reset something in him. If one works diligently, heaven will see and reward. A slave changes destiny by working hard and being diligent. Why can't he? His eyes lit up. He would take his own destiny in his hands. But first, he had something to take care of. It was evening when Dele returned to Akin's town. Akin was pleased to see him. My friend, where have you been? You missed a great party last night. I'm sure it was with Ola warming your bed, Dele said coldly. Akin felt awkward, being berated by his friend. Ola was mine, but you still went for her. What kind of friend are you? Dele vented. Mind the way you talk to your master's servant, Akin retorted. I can have whichever woman I want. I am Akin, the Bale of Ibaland. Dele broke into a mocking laughter to Akin's bewilderment. I know who you are. I alone know who you really are. So snap out of your delusions, Dele warned him. Akin was silent. He could notice something had changed about Dele. Now listen, I am going very far away from you and your delusions. You will give me 3 full bags of cowries to embark on my venture. Akin was infuriated. How dare this pauper try to blackmail him? How dare you? Akin spat. I could have you removed from this earth with a snap of my finger. And I could have you removed from this fairy tale life with a click of my tongue, Dele replied. Perhaps you would like us to have this conversation in front of Doku. I have nothing to lose, but Akin had everything to lose if there was any doubt about his identity. You will take the money and never show your face here again, Akin threatened him. Your face is the last I ever want to see again, Baba, Dele scoffed. Now go and get my money, Baba. I'm in a haste. Akin glared at Dele in anger. For the first time in many months, things had not gone his way. Then an evil smirk appeared on his face. Just so you know, Akin snared, I made her mourn all night. She said she'd rather be with a real man than with a servant. Akin sniggered, seeing the pains in Dele's eyes. He could have all the bags of money, but Dele knew he had lost this one. And so Dele left town before dusk, armed with 3 bags of cowries, carefully stashed in his slim bag. Let me see which useless prophecy will stop me in my quest for success, he muttered to himself. And so Dele journeyed for days, passing through many towns, including his own, determined to build a new life away from his past, far away from heartbreak and betrayal. He journeyed far across the kingdom. He controlled himself from wasteful spending. Yet, his kindness to the poor reminded him that he hadn't really changed. from the man he was. He even felt a pang of guilt for blackmailing his friend for money. After one more day's journey, Dele arrived at a small village called Uri. The people seemed peaceful, and he came upon a big field that looked like an abandoned farmland. At the end of the field, he found a farmhouse where an old woman, a childless widow, lived alone since her husband's death. Dele rented a room from her, and she was happy to finally have some company. Settling in, Dele lay on his bed, thinking his plans through. He would rent the farmland and start farming. The land was massive, so he'd plant many crops and hire many servants, paying them good wages. The plan sweetened his belly as he grinned on his bed. And then he wondered about Ola. How was she doing living with the treacherous Akin? She had broken his heart, but he still cared about her. In a small village far away, 2 days' journey from Dele, Ola sat outside her mother's hut that same night. Yes, she was back in her own town and heartbroken. Dele had turned out to be a man she did not know he was. When Akin asked her out in his chambers, she had turned him down, letting him know her heart was with Dele. When she came outside, she searched everywhere but couldn't find Dele, not even at the party Akin had thrown for her company. She was now really worried. It was in the evening the next day that someone told her she had seen Dele leaving the compound with a sling bag. She rushed to the entrance of the compound but missed him. Confused, Ola went to ask Akin what was going on with Dele. Dele found out I was interested in you, Akin lied smoothly. He decided to trade you off to me for 3 bags of cowries and left town with the money. I don't believe you, Ola said in disbelief. Dele has always wanted to be rich, Ola. He saw his opportunity and took it, Akin insisted. Come and be my wife. I love you so much. But Ola left before he could finish. She couldn't believe it until Doku confirmed that Dele was indeed given 3 bags of cowries by his generous master. Heartbroken, she wept that night. Dele of all people, he even left without a word. He was indeed heartless. As Ola sat under the moonlight, the pain was still fresh in her heart. The next morning, before Abebi, the old widow, woke up, Dele had cleared all the bushes surrounding the farmhouse. Everywhere looked tidy and kept. Abebi was very happy with him. As she and Dele sat down for breakfast, Dele asked Abebi to lease the abandoned farmlands to him for 2 years. He'd pay her in full. Abebi smiled, but offered to give Dele the farmlands to farm for free. The farmlands had lain fallow for many years since her husband's death. It would be her pleasure if someone put them to use. Besides, she was old and grey, without an heir. What would she do with this money? After much persuasion, Abebi agreed to take payment, but in crops. Dele would give her 10% of the farm produce. Dele agreed. Straight away, Dele went into action. He employed servants to clear the land. Although it was late in the farming season, Dele planted various crops on the land because it was very large. He planted corn, cassava, yam, and tomatoes. Every day, Dele worked on the farm with his laborers. They were shocked to see their master doing farm work with them, which made them work even harder. Our baby admired his work ethic. He reminded her of her late husband. When Dele got home, he still assisted with chores. He had gradually become the son she never had. Then came the rains, showers of blessings on the earth. The crops blossomed and the fields were green with blessings. A few months later, it was time for Dele to harvest his corn and tomatoes. The soil was so fertile that it gave Dele a bountiful harvest of large crops. He gave the widow her 10%, sold 70%, and kept 20% for them to eat. However, our baby pretended to sell her 10% to some men, but she had actually hired them to distribute it to the poor in Ori village and the neighboring towns. When people asked who the food was from, they said it was from Ola, the mighty farmer, just as Abebi had instructed them. 2 yam harvests later, Akin was growing impatient, waiting to ascend the throne. Although the current king was old and grey, the Baba did not look like he'd join his ancestors soon, with his new young wife by his side. Akin could no longer hide his frustration. How will I ever become king if this man lives forever? He vented to Doku. Patience, Baale. You are still young. Your time will come, Doku assured him. But Akin was not one to wait for time. He was a man of destiny, the foretold one. He must find a way to speed things up. Meanwhile, far away in Ori village, Dele had become the biggest farmer in the village and surrounding towns just after 2 yam harvest. His hard work and diligence had paid off. He had bought more acres of farmland to add to the old widows. People far and near came in numbers to buy his crops. Dele built a magnificent farmhouse for the old widow, and Abebi continued to secretly distribute her share of the crops amongst the poor, saying they were from Ola, the mighty farmer of Ori. The fame of Ola, the mighty and generous farmer, spread throughout the kingdom, yet no one knew who he really was. He remained an enigma. And so Dele continued to prosper, but in 6 full moons, things would take a dark turn. The rains refused to fall on the land. The once green fields turned brown as the crops withered under the scorching sun. The drought continued for several moons, resulting in a harsh famine. People left the villages and towns in droves, including farm laborers. Dele wasn't spared. The once richest farmer in the village now sat overwhelmed and desolate. He couldn't believe how quickly everything had changed. One day, while lost in his sorrowful thoughts, he had an unexpected visitor. Otumba, the farmer he once worked for, had come to visit the farm of Ola, the mighty farmer of Ori. Dele was surprised to see him. Otumba, seeing Dele, assumed he was one of Ola's servants. I came to see your master, Ola the mighty farmer, Otumba said. Dele stared at him in confusion. Never mind, the same fate has befallen us all. I am heading east. I hear they were spared from the famine. You are leaving? Dele asked in disbelief. Yes, and you should come with me too. You were always very hardworking. I could use someone like you as I start over in the new land. Dele hesitated. A servant again? Don't take too long to decide, my boy. I leave at dawn the day after tomorrow. I am staying in the next town, Utumba said before leaving. Dele stood transfixed. What did all this mean? Had the gods reduced him to nothing, as the seer had prophesied? Meanwhile, 2 days' journey from Dele, Ola sat outside her mother's hut with a forlorn expression. The famine had hit her village so hard, but the news of Otumba leaving town only made things worse. To survive the famine, Ola's mother advised her to return to Akin and be his wife. Ola objected. But mother, I cannot marry Akin. Our situation may be dire, but I cannot do it. Everyone is leaving the village, Ola's mother said. We cannot stay here and starve. Ola pondered on her mother's words. She was right. They had to leave. But she would only go to Iba to find work. She wanted nothing to do with Akin or his friend Dele. The pains of the past still lingered. Meanwhile, a day's journey from Ola, Akin had become notorious for using the famine to instigate the elders and kingmakers against the king. If I were king, I would have solved this food problem, even if it meant importing food from the north, Akin lamented. But you can only be king if the present Oba dies, said a kingmaker. That is, if we don't all die in the famine, Akin said gloomily. The kingmaker absorbed Akin's words with fear. Elenu, another kingmaker and trusted confidant of the king, went to the king and told him everything Akin was doing. The people are starving and would do anything to survive. You must act fast, he advised the king. The famine had become so severe that Akin was feeding more than half of the king's council members and kingmakers. He had their ears and hearts. You must open your barn and feed the people. Send servants far and near to buy food for them. If the people's heart are with you, it will be hard to install a different king over them, Elenu advised the king. The king pondered Elenu's words. They were full of wisdom and truth, as always. Meanwhile, back in Ori village, Dele and Abebi sat down to breakfast in silence. Dele hadn't touched his meal. His mouth was dry and bitter. His eyes were sunken from lack of sleep. You should follow Otumba, Abebi broke the silence. Huh? Dele was pulled out of his thoughts. You should follow Otumba. He will treat you well, Abebi repeated. I can't. I can't go back to being a servant again. I can't, Dele protested. We don't know how long the famine will last. You spent all your cowries on those farmlands, Abebi reminded him. Maybe the seer was right. I am destined to be a servant. Even the heavens are against me, Dele grunted heavily. That night, Dele resolved to join Otumba on his journey. Maybe his destiny was to be a servant after all. In his sadness, he remembered Ola. Being a servant would have been easier with her by his side. If only things had worked out between them. If only. Dele fell asleep and slipped into a dream. He saw himself in the midst of a merchant caravan. He recognized the colorful camels and saw Yaya sitting under a tree. "You were wrong, Yaya," Dele vented. "I worked diligently, but the heavens rewarded me with famine." Yaya remained calm and gestured for Dele to sit with him. "Are you the only one experiencing the famine?" he asked. "No, the whole kingdom. Every farmer is affected," Dele replied. Yaya smiled. "I did not become the wealthiest merchant in the region by thinking and acting like the average merchant. I became great because I could turn my challenges into profitable opportunities." Dele listened attentively. "Sometimes, if the things you need do not come to you, you go to them," Yaya said. Dele woke up from his slumber. It was already past dawn. Otumba's expedition would have left by now. As Dele walked through the farmhouse compound, he felt invigorated, having had a good night's sleep for the first time in weeks. He pondered Yaya's words. What could they mean? Then his eyes fell on a servant fetching water from the well. Suddenly, it hit him. If the rains could not come to him, he could dig the ground to find water. "Foreman, assemble everyone!" Dele called out to his remaining servants. In a few hours, Dele and his servants were hard at work, digging wells in the farmlands. The next day, they found water, and their joy knew no bounds. They soaked the parched soil with water and began to till it. Dele took a portion of the grains and tubers from the food supply and planted them on the farmlands. "Now we water the farms as the rains would have done it for us," he told his servants. Meanwhile, back in the king's city, Akin's troubles compounded. The king had heeded to Elenu's advice. He opened his barns and fed the people. Even the elders who were loyal to Akin benefited from the king's benevolence, so much that they now sang a different tune. "These are trying times, Baale," one of the kingmakers told Akin. "The king is trying his best." Akin was devastated. His plans had been scuttled. The hearts of the people were back to their king. He was left with only one choice: elimination. As you would have guessed by now, Dele's fortunes had completely turned around. His farmlands were now lush and vibrant with crops, bustling with the energy of countless laborers who had returned to work the soil. People from neighboring towns and even distant regions flocked to buy his produce. In just 12 full moons, his lot had changed. Meanwhile, Abebi continued to give out her 10% to the poor in the village and neighboring towns in the name of Ola, the mighty farmer, feeder of the poor, who farms without rain. Among those who came to buy crops were the king's servants, led by Elenu, the king's trusted chief. Dele was surprised and delighted to see the king's servants at his doorstep. "We are seeking the one called Ola, the mighty farmer, feeder of the poor, who farms without rain." Dele stared at him in confusion. "Ola who?" But Abebi stepped in. "You are in the right place," she told Elenu, "and you are standing in his presence." Then the king's servants presented gifts and bags of cowries to Dele. Thereafter, Abebi asked them to stay for the night. You can journey back to the palace after you are well rested and refreshed, she told them. Elenu accepted with thanks. Then Dele called Abebi aside when the king's servants were taken to their quarters. Mother, what was that all about? He asked. Who is Ola, the mighty farmer? Is your name not Olamidele? She retorted. Are you not a mighty farmer? Dele still did not understand. The old widow now confessed to him what she had been doing with her 10% of the crops. As a result of her actions, his fame had spread abroad and brought the king to his doorstep. Dele prostrated and thanked the widow. She has indeed been a selfless mother whose kind gestures had opened up his destiny. It was a busy evening in the farm settlements of Ola the mighty farmer, and Ola had been reassigned to the kitchen of the farmhouse compound. The king's servants had visited, and more hands were needed to prepare a great feast for them. Yes, Ola had been working here for 6 full moons now. She had gone with her mother to work for Akin, but when Akin realized that she would never agree to be his wife, he assigned her the tedious of labors for a meager pay. Then, when she heard of Ola, the mighty farmer, feeder of the poor, who farmed without rain, she decided to come work for him. Upon arriving the farmlands of Ola the mighty farmer with her mother, Ola was overwhelmed by the sight. The green lands with lush crops were a stark contrast to the parched lands they had left behind. The farm settlement was a bustling community, embodying a community spirit that Ola found comforting. The head foreman assigned Ola to the settlement's kitchen, deeming her too delicate for the difficult farm work. For all the 6 moons she had worked in the settlement kitchen, never setting her eyes on Ola, the mighty farmer. Her days were filled with endless tasks, and every evening she would collapse, exhausted but fulfilled, having contributed to the feast that fed many. Ola, where are the yams? Snapped her superior, jolted her back to the present task, and she hurried off. That evening, Dele had come to the yam barns to select the best yams as a gift to the king. Then he spotted a familiar face. Ola was there, picking yams from the barn with other women. Dele's heart skipped. It had been 3 yam harvests, yet the sight of her still stirred deep emotions within him. Ola, unaware of Dele's presence, continued in her chore as Dele approached. Ola, he called softly. Startled, she turned and saw Dele standing before her. A mix of emotions played across her face. Surprise, anger, and a glimmer of longing. Dele, she replied coldly. They stood there, the bustling yam barn fading into the background as they faced each other. From the way Dele carried himself and how the servants reacted to him, Ola could tell that Dele was Ola the mighty farmer. Of course, Ola Bamidele. It made sense now. Dele's heart pounded. I didn't expect to see you here, he said. And I didn't expect you to become a wealthy farmer, Ola retorted, her tone sharp. So how much did you make, selling me for 3 bags of cowries? Dele's eyes widened in shock. What are you talking about? Akin told me everything, she spat. You traded me for money and left without a word. Is that all I was worth to you? Dele felt a surge of anger. That's a lie. Akin lied to you. He told me you gave yourself to him for wealth and status. Ola's eyes flashed with indignation. I would never do that. I turned him down because my heart was with you. But you believed his lies, didn't you? Dele stepped closer, his voice trembling. I saw you with him, heard him talk about making you his wife. How was I supposed to believe anything else? Ola's eyes filled with tears. You should have trusted me, Dele. Instead, you left me heartbroken and confused. Dele looked down, his guilt overwhelming. I thought you betrayed me. I was blinded by anger and jealousy. Jealousy? You were blinded by greed. Ola shot back. I never betrayed you, Dele. I loved you. As the tension between them reached its peak, Ola held up her wrist. She still wore the cowrie's bracelets Dele had bought for her. Do you see this? I've worn it every day since you gave it to me. It reminded me of you, even when I thought you had forgotten me. Dele's heart softened at the sight of the bracelet. Ola, I'm sorry. I was a fool to believe Akin's lies. I never stopped loving you. Ola's tears spilled over, but she turned her face away, trying to hold on to her anger. How can I believe you, Dele? How do I know this isn't another lie? Dele reached out and took her hand, looking into her eyes with sincerity. Because this time I'm here, standing before you, not running away. I want to make things right. Then, with a soft sob, Ola fell into his arms. Dele held her tightly, feeling the weight of 4 yam harvests lift from his shoulders. True love is always forgiving, and their past grievances melted away in the warmth of their reunion. That night, the feast wasn't only for the king's servants. Everyone rejoiced at the reunion of Ola and Dele. 2 yam harvests went by, but the famine continued to ravage the kingdom. Everyone who remained now depended on Ola, the mighty farmer, for sustenance. Dele expanded his farmlands throughout the neighboring towns. He had several hundreds of servants, so digging wells and irrigating the acres of farmlands was not a problem. He continued to sustain the people within and outside the kingdom. Yes, your ears were itching to hear. Dele married Ola, and they were blessed with a son. The old widow was ecstatic. Not only had the heavens given her a son, but they also blessed her with a grandson as well. Meanwhile, back in the king's city, the emotions were not that of joy. The king had passed on in the most mysterious of ways. While Elenu and the king's family members mourned, Akin was ecstatic in his quarters. Now his destiny would be fulfilled, he said to himself. Akin's elimination plan had worked. He compromised the king's cook after giving the greedy man lots of gold and cowries to do the job. After the deed was done, the cook himself was now a loose end, and Akin had to eliminate him too. With the help of Jedi, a notorious vagabond who had hundreds of ill-hearted men at his command, Akin had formed an alliance with them. While he fed them in the famine, they in turn did his biddings. What is a king without an army? Doku was disturbed by Akin's new association. He began to doubt if he really was indeed the son of Ajani, a man who was kind and humble. Akin's heart had turned dark. in his lust for power. That same night, the elders and the kingmakers took counsel. They had consulted Eledumare, and it was revealed that the famine will continue for another 3-yam harvest. We will not survive if something is not done fast, Elenu said gloomily. Everyone agreed. An elder suggested they turn to Ola the mighty farmer for help. He said from the reports of the servants the king sent to buy food, it was apparent that Ola the mighty farmer was kind and wise. He would find a solution to feed the whole kingdom for the 3-yam harvest. But we have no money left to buy food. We have spent our last cowries to buy food for the people, Elenu said. Akin has money, said a kingmaker. He can help us. But a great number of elders objected sharply. Never, said the oldest elder. We don't need a man with such lust for power. Remember, our king died in a mysterious way after Akin tried to overthrow him, another elder said. A witch cries at night and a child dies in the morning, a kingmaker pondered out loudly. The kingdom is vulnerable at this time. We need a man of compassion, said Elenu. What is Akin doing with a private army? He can't be trusted, an elder vented. Then everywhere was quiet. It was obvious. Ola the mighty farmer was their only hope. But how would they get him to help? Why don't we make him king then? Said the oldest elder. The throne is vacant. If a man is wise enough to plant food without rain and reap a harvest that fits the kingdom, why can't he rule over us? His words settled well with all the elders. It was decided they would send for Ola the mighty farmer and make him king. Meanwhile, back in Iba town, the news did not take long before reaching Akin, who screamed with rage. How dare those old morons try to mess with my destiny, he roared. I will deal with them and their farmer king. He sent for Jesi, who was ready with an evil plan. Ola the mighty farmer had only farm laborers around him, so it would be easy to ambush him on his way to the coronation and take him out. The plan sounded great to Akin. After that, we will storm the palace and take what's rightfully mine, Akin growled. It was the second day, as Dele was spending time with his wife and son, that the delegates from the palace, led by Elenu, arrived. Dele was confused to see them. After Elenu told Dele their mission, he was speechless. Being a great farmer was one thing, but being a king was a whole different responsibility entirely. The weight of their request weighed down on his shoulders. He demanded they give him some time to consider their offer. Do not take too long to decide, great farmer. We are like little chicks exposed after the death of the mother hen. The hawk is in the shadows waiting. At any time, it can attack. That night, Dele was restless. He went to see the old widow for wisdom. Rivers flow into seas, our baby said. Your journey since the day you came here has been towards greatness. I knew this the first day I saw you. But being a king is a huge responsibility. I don't know if I can do it. Dele doubted himself. You have everything to succeed as a king. You are a wise and compassionate man. The kingdom needs wisdom and compassion at this trying time, the old widow said. With that, Dele returned to Ola, who was waiting for him. Have you decided? She asked with apprehension. The people need me, but if I take this offer, your life will change forever, Dele told her. I will follow you anywhere, my husband, Ola vowed. Dele held his wife in his arms. It was foretold that he would be a servant all his life, but look at him now. The next day, just before the sun went down, Dele had another esteemed visitor, Yaya, the wealthy merchant. Dele could not believe his eyes. Yaya had stopped to buy food for his caravan as he journeyed through the town. Greetings, my name is... I know who you are, Dele cut in excitedly. My whole family knows who you are. And before the cock crew that evening, Dele had told Yaya everything that had happened in his life since the day he heard his inspirational speech on the dusty road. Yaya was thrilled. I always hoped someone would pick something from my words other than the gold I threw on the ground. I am fulfilled, Yaya said. And lucky too. If you had come a day later, you would have missed me. I leave tomorrow for my coronation, said Dele. My men will accompany you, Yaya said with joy. You will arrive as a king. Dele was overjoyed. But first, Yaya said with some seriousness, there is someone I want you to meet. Dele frowned curiously. 2 days later, and the elders and nobles of the kingdom waited in anticipation for the arrival of Ola, the mighty farmer, to crown him their king. Akin was present, but unusually calm, a sharp contrast to his usual irascibility. Meanwhile, a few hours away, Dele in the company of Yaya continued on the dusty road. And there was Jedi spying on them from the covers of the barren hills. He did not expect Ola the mighty farmer to come in the caravan of Yaya the great merchant. But what must be done must be done. Jedi gave a shout, and he and his men charged forward, ambushing the caravan. But then Yaya's men, ever vigilant, repelled them with swift efficiency. Jedi was captured, and under the threat of death, he begged for his life. Please, spare me. I will tell you everything, Jedi pleaded, his voice trembling. The king's city was agog when Dele and his party arrived. The elders received him warmly, their gratitude palpable. Akin's calm demeanor evaporated in shock as he recognized Ola, the mighty farmer, as his estranged friend. It can't be! Dele? Akin stammered, his face pale. Dele met Akin's gaze with a still look. Yes, it is I, Akin. Surprised to see me? Alive? No, it can't be. You were supposed to be a servant for the rest of your life, Akin said. When a man works diligently, the heavens see and reward, said Yaya with strong conviction. As Akin struggled to grasp the impossibility, Jedi, trembling with fear, pointed at Akin and declared him to be the instigator of the assassination attempt. He's lying, Akin shouted, his voice trembling. This is a plot against me. We will come to that later, Dele said calmly. First, there is someone all of us should meet. Akin frowned with apprehension, wondering what his estranged friend was up to. A young man stepped forward, claiming to be Ajani, the son of the deceased old man whose wealth Akin had inherited. I am Ajani, son of Ajani, he announced. I was taken by slave raiders and later bought my freedom from Yaya, the great merchant, after serving him for 15 years. You are lying, barked Akin. Where is your proof? I have the ring to show I am my father's son. Dele brought you here to lie against me. Dele watched intently, his gaze unwavering. I lost that ring while traveling through the neighboring town, young Ajani replied. Toku was confused by all this. Akin had the ring, but this boy was a striking resemblance of his late master. Wait, said Doku. Where did your father lose you? He asked both men. Young Ajani confidently answered, the big market in Ede. I saw a peacock and wandered off. Akin, caught off guard, didn't know what to say. He stammered, in a small town. I was too young to remember where. Doku shook his head at Akin, with pain and disappointment in his eyes. You lied to us all this time, Akin. You are wicked. No, this is a mistake. He is the impostor. I swear to you, I am Ajani's son. Akin yelled, desperation creeping into his voice. Enough, Akin. Your deceit ends here. Dele's authoritative voice cut through the noise. Then Dele revealed the truth about Akin's false identity, exposing his treachery, how he found the ring in the sand and deceived Doku. The elders, now filled with righteous anger, ordered Akin to be imprisoned for life. Take him away, Elenu demanded. He will pay for his crimes. As Akin was dragged away, he begged for mercy from Dele and the elders. Please, spare me. I was misled. But his pleas fell on deaf ears. With the truth now revealed and justice served, Dele was crowned king and the kingdom erupted in celebration. Under Dele's wise and compassionate rule, no one in the kingdom went hungry. For the remaining 3 yam harvests, the famine lasted. Dele built a magnificent palace in Ori, moving his seat of power there. Ola, now queen, stood by his side, radiant and proud. The old widow, watching from the sidelines, wiped a tear of joy from her eye. Ori had transformed into a royal town, and his people flourished under Dele's just and generous rule. As the kingdom prospered, the wisdom of a proverb echoed in their lives. A log submerged in water will eventually float to the surface. Although Dele was submerged by the negative words of the Seer, he eventually rose to fulfill his true destiny. When one works diligently, the heavens will see and reward.